Good morning, friends. As we continue looking at the kind of mercy that God calls us to have, we turn our attention to another parable, the parable of the unforgiving servant, or some may refer to him as the unmerciful servant. And Jesus tells this parable because Peter asks him a rather pointed question that deserves a rather pointed response. In Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 and 22, we read, "Then Peter came up to him and said to him, 'Lord, how often will my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? As many as 7 times?' Jesus said to him, 'I do not say to you 7 times, but 77 times.'" And then Jesus goes on to tell the parable itself, which we'll actually get into tomorrow. But for right now, let's consider this initial exchange between Peter and our Lord. Because the problem that Jesus is going to address, among other things, is the motive with which Peter asked this question. And it's true, all we have to go on is the bare text. And we know that reading text is not the same as speaking face to face. So we may not be quite sure of someone's tone or inflection. So it's possible to misinterpret people's intentions or their motives. But in this case, it seems pretty clear that Peter is eager to find a limit to mercy. He basically asks, if my brother keeps on sinning against me, when can I stop forgiving him? When is enough enough? When can I respond with the hard edge of justice rather than the mercy of forgiveness? And this strikes at the very core of what mercy is, because as we've already been learning, being merciful means loving even your enemy and seeking their best. Being merciful inclines you to practicing mercy. And yet Peter betrays where his inclination really is, as if to say, okay, Lord, I get it. I need to be merciful, but for how long? In other words, Peter understood the requirement of mercy, but he was not yet predisposed toward mercy. And Jesus wants us to be predisposed to default to mercy, to always be willing to be merciful, to not be looking for that opportunity where all of a sudden mercy goes away, and then we're just really happy that we can finally lay the smack down because that's what we've been secretly looking for all along. Again, we consider God's disposition on this matter. In Ezekiel 33:11, a familiar verse to us after several months of coming back to it, God says to Ezekiel, "Say to them, as I live, declares the Lord, I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but that the wicked turn from his way and live." And this attitude, which of course God himself has, is essential to actual mercy. Because God does not exercise mercy while all along in the back of his mind I can't wait for them to step so far over the line that no one could blame me for whacking them. Mercy is not just a PR thing to get people to say, yeah, he gave them enough time, can't really blame God for judging them. I mean, in one sense, because God is so merciful, we should all absolutely think that. We should be amazed by his mercy and patience, and so that when he does judge, we have no ability to say that God is out of line in any way at all for that judgment. But the point I'm trying to make is that God's not just covering his backside with mercy until he can then get to the fun stuff of judgment, as it were. He really does want people to be saved. He wants people to turn to him so that they can live and not be judged. He is at his very core inclined toward mercy. And friends, if he wasn't, none of us would be saved. And so we need to have that same mentality. It doesn't matter how many times someone sins against us, our response should be one of mercy, the willingness to forgive, and certainly not retaliate against them. Because justice is absolutely a thing, but vengeance belongs to the Lord. As we've learned in the past, it's not that we don't care about personal justice. We certainly do. But when someone sins against us, we leave the justice aspect to the Lord and we respond in mercy. And rest assured, justice will be taken care of. God will take care of it. And so when Peter comes to ask Jesus how many times he needs to be merciful and forgiving the one who sins against him, he actually offers a suggested number of times. 7 times? That's a good number. And really, it's a lot more than just giving someone a second chance or even a third chance, right? Seems pretty merciful. But Jesus still replies with, "I do not say to you 7 times, but 77 times. Now, of course, when it comes right down to it, if someone really wanted to, they could keep track of everybody else's sins against them, and they could put the hard cap at 77 sins. But that, of course, is not what Jesus is trying to drive at here. The point is that Peter comes with a suggested number of times, and Jesus replies with a number that blows Peter's suggestion out of the water. We need to be willing to extend mercy time and time again. And honestly, as many times as we hope God will be merciful to us, That's the number of times we need to be willing to be merciful and forgive others. And so that means that not only 77 times, but 77,000 times would be too few for God to forgive us, because we have many more sins than that. So in light of God's mercies toward us, let us be merciful to all those around us. No matter how many times they've hurt us, no matter how many times they've sinned against us, let us be merciful. Have a good and godly day, and Lord willing, I'll see you tomorrow.